The bride collapsed on the operating table, while the groom was outside the emergency room holding another woman in his arms. I never imagined my wedding would end with a surgery and betrayal. Under the blinding surgical lights, I vaguely heard the doctor's voice echo beside me. "Mr. Foster, both your wife and Miss Lynn urgently need a blood transfusion, but the hospital doesn't have enough. Who should we prioritize first?" Logan Foster's voice came cold and decisive. "Give it to Lacey first. She's carrying my child. Nothing can happen to her." The doctor tried to reason with him. "But your wife's condition is more critical. If we don't transfuse her now, I'm afraid she won't make it. We've already contacted other blood banks. The blood will arrive soon. Please reconsider." His voice turned sharp, filled with anger. "Didn't I make myself clear? Give it to Lacey first. I won't let anything happen to her." Logan's jaw clenched as he forced out the words, almost like a vow he'd regret forever. "If something really happens to her, I'll take care of her for the rest of my life." A gentle hand brushed across my face, followed by a familiar voice tinged with helplessness. Not being able to marry Lacey was already my biggest mistake. I can't let her suffer any more pain. "Evelyn, you'll understand me, won't you?" At that moment, my heart felt like it was being crushed, sinking slowly into an icy abyss. A single tear slid down my cheek and everything went dark. When I woke up, Logan was resting his head beside my bed, still holding my hand tightly as if he'd been there for a long time. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious. I only saw how gaunt he looked, his clothes wrinkled, his chin covered in stubble, his whole being exhausted. I moved my fingers slightly, and he instantly woke up. When he saw my eyes open, his red-rimmed eyes brightened with relief. "Evelyn, you're awake," he said, his voice trembling. He gently ran his hand through my hair, his tone hoarse. "I thought I'd never see you again." In that moment, he looked as though he loved me deeply, so much it hurt. If I hadn't heard that conversation before, maybe I would have truly been moved. But now, I couldn't utter a single word. Even so, Logan still cared for me tenderly and patiently, just as before. He called the doctor, followed every instruction carefully, fed me, wiped my hands, tended to every little detail without complaint. The nurse standing nearby sighed softly. "You're so lucky. While you were unconscious, he never left your side, not even for a moment. He hasn't slept for days." I smiled faintly. Lucky? Does Logan really love me? How can a heart be split between two people? I opened my email and stared at the invitation I had just received. Without hesitation, I typed my reply, hit send, and booked a flight to the UK. Years ago, for him, I turned down my professor's offer to stay abroad and chose to come home. But now, he had someone else. It was time for me to let go. I had never met Lacey Lynn, but her name was no stranger to me. The first time I heard it was one evening when I called Logan at his office. He sounded frustrated. I teased, "Why do you sound so upset tonight?" He sighed, irritation creeping into his tone. "The company just hired a new assistant. She's so clumsy she spilled coffee on an important proposal. Almost cost me a major deal." Feeling bad for him, I wanted to order some late-night food, but he refused. "That silly girl's still working overtime with me," he said. "She's clumsy, but she's a decent cook." Back then, I didn't think much of it. I trusted him, trusted in our 15 years of love. But now, standing by the hospital window, I saw with my own eyes how tightly he held her. All those small details I'd brushed aside before suddenly came together, clear and cruel. Logan Foster had been unfaithful. I called him. Under the streetlight, the two of them immediately stepped apart. His voice came through the phone, calm as ever. "What do you want to eat tonight?" I steadied my voice and said, "I want the red bean cake from the stall in front of our old high school," I said softly. But that school had long been torn down, and the little cake shop tied to my childhood memories no longer existed. Logan paused for a moment, then let out a gentle laugh. "All right, I'll go get it for you right now. I'm just happy you want to eat something." Under the warm yellow light, the two of them, him and that woman, walked quietly away. A while later he returned, the sweet smell of red bean cake filling the room, along with another unfamiliar scent. The moment I caught it, nausea surged through me, and I nearly threw up. Startled, Logan rushed forward to hold me, his voice full of worry. I didn't respond, I just let my tears fall silently. He panicked and called for the doctor, but I held his hand tightly, whispering hoarsely, "Logan, it hurts so much. It hurts like I'm dying." He pulled me into his arms, comforting me as he always did. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." I closed my eyes, pretending to drift off to sleep. When he thought I was asleep, he gently laid me down and quietly left the room. The door clicked shut. The moment it did, I opened my eyes and stood up, walking toward the door. Just on the other side, faint sounds reached my ears, ragged breathing, and Logan's deep, teasing voice. "You've got some nerve, trying to seduce me right outside her room." A soft, trembling female voice answered. "I missed you, and the baby misses you too." I covered my mouth, stifling a sob as pain ripped through my chest. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Later, Logan and I had a terrible argument. I wanted to call the police to investigate Lacey Lynn's car accident, but he stopped me. "It was just an accident," he said. "She doesn't know how to drive well. It wasn't intentional. Her parents passed away early. She only has an old, sick grandmother left. Life's been hard enough for her already. Evelyn, you weren't seriously hurt, so why make things worse?" I stared at him, stunned. When I first woke up, he had cried like a broken man, and now he told me I wasn't even badly injured. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice cold. "Logan Foster, you always said she's clumsy and doesn't even know how to drive. Then why do you still keep her around?" His expression froze for a moment before he replied, "She's been through a lot. I just want to help her. Looking at her reminds me of what we used to be." I let out a bitter laugh. "There are plenty of poor people in this world, Logan. Why don't you save them all while you're at it?" His face darkened instantly. He stood up abruptly, anger flaring. "Are you accusing me? I can't believe you've become so bitter. You want to ruin her life over something so small? Evelyn, you've really disappointed me." Then he turned and left. I sat there, frozen, unsure if what I felt was anger or heartbreak, just an emptiness swallowing me whole. The nurse came in and saw me crying. She hurried over, gently patting my shoulder. "Don't cry, dear. You're still young. You'll have more children someday." I looked up at her, stunned. "What, children?" Her face turned pale, her eyes darting nervously. "Oh, you didn't know? Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." My whole body went cold. I bolted straight to the doctor's office. The doctor looked at me with pity in her eyes, her voice soft and hesitant. "Your husband hasn't told you?" She paused, then spoke quietly. "You had a miscarriage. The baby was 3 months along." I walked out of the examination room like a ghost, drifting aimlessly down the hospital corridor. My knees gave out, and I clutched my stomach, sobbing uncontrollably. I was an orphan. My parents died young, and my grandmother raised me. She passed away 5 years ago. I had always hoped for a home, a real family. That baby was my hope. My hands trembled as I touched my belly. There had once been a tiny life there. It came to me quietly and left me just as silently. And its father? He felt no sorrow, no grief, only the urge to protect the woman who had caused our child's death. "Mommy, when are you coming home? I miss you." I lifted my head and looked down the hospital corridor. At the far end, Logan Foster was holding the hand of a little boy about 4 or 5 years old. Across from him stood Lacey Lynn, her smile gentle and tender. She bent down and brushed the boy's hair lovingly. "Mommy's getting discharged soon," she said softly. "Have you been good while Mommy was away, Evan?" "I've been really good. Uncle Logan says I'm the best boy ever," the child chirped proudly. Logan's normally cold, distant face softened, his voice warm and kind. "Evan, you really are a great kid," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." The scene before me looked almost perfect, like a ready-made family. A man, a woman, and a child framed in the soft light of the hospital hallway. My chest tightened painfully as I watched them. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and scrolled through old messages. I had been overseas for 7 years, while Evan was already 4, maybe 5. Lacey and Logan had known each other for less than half a year. That child couldn't possibly be his. A cold shiver ran through me. So this was it. Not a child binding them together, but something subtler and far more dangerous. Pity, familiarity, and the comfort of being needed. All the little things I'd brushed off, the way he defended her, the softness in his voice when he spoke her name, suddenly formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. A chill ran down my spine, freezing me to the core. My whole body shook uncontrollably, as if someone had poured a bucket of ice water over me. Now I finally understood. No wonder he never fired her, no matter how many mistakes she made. No wonder he ignored every other woman but always ate the meals she cooked for him. I suddenly remembered that every time Logan visited me in London, before returning home, he would stop by the mall to buy piles of luxury cosmetics and perfume. I used to ask him curiously, and he'd always answer casually, "They're just business gifts." But now, thinking about it, those gifts must have been for Lacey. A wave of disgust surged through me. I covered my mouth, trying to hold back my sobs, the pain so suffocating it felt like I couldn't breathe. And yet, I had always believed I'd done everything right. I never betrayed anyone. I was sincere and wholehearted with both my friends and the man I loved. Logan once told me that meeting me was the greatest luck of his life. He said he loved me deeply, indulged all my whims, never once let me suffer any grievance. He remembered every little thing I liked, treated me like I was more precious than his own life. But now, I realized, it had all been a cruel joke. Watching him and Lacey walk toward the stairway hand in hand, I instinctively hid behind the door. I didn't have the courage to face the truth. I was terrified of the disgust, the betrayal, the brutal reality. Love, once so sweet and tender, had turned into a nightmare. I knew that from this day on, every time I woke in the middle of the night, I would relive this nightmare all over again. Numb and hollow, I walked out of the hospital, wandering aimlessly through the early spring dusk. The air was still cold and sharp, and I wore only a thin coat, but I kept walking until I found myself standing before the narrow alley where Logan and I had grown up. We had spent our childhood there. His wasn't a happy one. His father was a drunk who beat him often, and his mother, unable to bear that living hell, gave birth to him and then disappeared without a trace. From a young age, Logan grew up under his father's fists. The first time I met him, he was kneeling at the entrance of the alley as punishment. He was small and thin, his face swollen red from being slapped, a trickle of blood on his forehead. I walked past him, then stopped and turned back. Finally, I reached out and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward my house. "You're such an idiot," I said. "If he hits you again, just run. Come to my house, I'll give you food." My grandmother saw the bruises and welts on his body and couldn't hold back her tears. She kept muttering how cruel life was while gently treating his wounds with herbal medicine. Not long after, his father got drunk, fell into a pond, and drowned. The old, crumbling house was left with only Logan, alone and silent. My grandmother pitied him deeply and often invited him over for meals. But now, the alley we grew up in had long been demolished. Nothing remained but a stretch of barren land. My grandmother had been gone for many years, and even Logan Foster was no longer that teenage boy I once knew. Was there really anything in this world that never changed? "Evelyn." Logan's voice came from behind me. Before I could react, I felt myself pulled into his warm embrace. "Why did you sneak out like this? Do you have any idea how worried I was?" He held me tightly, refusing to let go. "You're mad at me, aren't you? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. It's just... I feel bad for Lacey. You know, she reminds me of how you used to be, but you've always been much stronger than her." I looked out at the empty lot ahead and said quietly, "I just missed my grandma." Then I turned my eyes to him, my voice soft but steady. "Logan, do you still remember what you said to her before she passed away?" He froze for a moment, and then a look of sorrow slowly clouded his face. "Of course I remember. Evelyn, I told her that I would love you for the rest of my life, that I'd protect you, and never let you get hurt." I closed my eyes, exhausted, a faint, bitter smile tugging at my lips. "So? You still remember?" Logan tightened his grip on my hand, his eyes full of determination. "Don't overthink things anymore. I've already rearranged everything for our wedding. The doctor said you can be discharged in 2 days. Once you're out, we'll hold a new ceremony. This time, nothing and no one will come between us." 2 days later, I quietly paid my medical bills and signed the discharge papers myself. When I left the hospital, the nurse looked at me in surprise. "Your husband let you handle the discharge on your own? That's unusual. When you were unconscious, he stayed by your side the whole time. He's so handsome and polite, honestly, every nurse here adores him." I simply smiled faintly. "He's busy." I didn't want to bother him. But in truth, I couldn't bear to see that face again. The face that now filled me with disgust. I asked my lawyer, Mrs. Lin, a highly rated divorce specialist I found online, to deliver the divorce papers directly to Logan, along with all the evidence and voice recordings I had collected these past few days. I told her clearly, I wanted half of all assets under his name and the house my grandmother left me. If I was going to cut ties, I wanted it clean, once and for all. Just as I was finalizing my travel documents, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, Logan lying in bed, fast asleep, his neck covered in love marks. In the corner of the picture, a pale, slender hand made a V sign for victory. I didn't need to guess who it was. Even after everything, he was still seeing Lacey. Even though I had already decided to walk away, my chest still tightened painfully when I saw that image. Before boarding my flight, I turned back for one last look at the city. This place held more than 25 years of my memories, joy, sorrow, reunions, and goodbyes. But in the end, my story here didn't have a happy ending. It was here that I lost everything. If nothing unexpected happened, I told myself I would never come back again. For the next 2 days, Logan couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Ever since Evelyn had woken up, that feeling had haunted him relentlessly, as though the secret he'd worked so hard to bury had finally been uncovered. The thought made him restless. Still, if Evelyn had truly found out about his affair based on her gentle nature, she would have cried, screamed, maybe confronted him. She was kind and easy to soothe. If he just apologized, admitted his mistakes, and begged sincerely, she would definitely come back to him. He stared at his phone screen. A message from Lacey Lynn popped up, but instead of excitement, he felt irritation. He kept reopening the chat, waiting for a message from Evelyn. But there was nothing. It hadn't always been this way. Evelyn used to have so much to say to him. She could chatter endlessly about the smallest things. She used to tell him about the little things, like a pretty leaf she'd found on the sidewalk, or a new cafe she wanted to try. But now, her silence was terrifying. Their last message had stopped at the previous day, when he'd texted to ask where she was. She hadn't replied. He drove around the city through several streets until he finally found her standing in that old alley from their childhood. One look at her expression filled him with a fear he'd never felt before, the fear of losing her forever. That was why he decided to move the wedding up. As soon as she was discharged, they would marry right away. This time, he swore, he would hold on to her and never let go again. But then came the call from the lawyer. At that moment, he had still been lost in dreams of a happy future, still imagining himself making her the happiest woman alive. Yet the polite, unfamiliar voice on the other end shattered that illusion completely. "Good afternoon, Mr. Foster. I'm the attorney representing Miss Evelyn. She has authorized me to draft a divorce settlement. Would you have time to discuss the terms?" Logan Foster froze. He had never once imagined that he and Evelyn would come to this. To him, love and temptation had always been separate things. Evelyn used to read campus romance novels where the male lead was always too blind to see his own love until it was too late, until he'd already hurt the woman who loved him most. But Logan wasn't like that. He wasn't that kind of man. He had loved Evelyn since their youth. He'd been certain of it. He had never once wavered. There would never be anyone in this world like her again. She was more precious to him than life itself. As for Lacey Lynn, she was nothing more than a distraction, a way to fill the emptiness when boredom crept in. She could never threaten Evelyn's place in his heart. And yet, sitting across from the lawyer, staring at Evelyn's firm signature on the divorce papers, Logan finally had to admit it. He did feel regret. I want to see Evelyn," he said quietly. Across from him, Attorney Lynn regarded him calmly, the corners of her mouth lifting in a cold, disdainful smile. "Mr. Foster, I've met many men like you. You enjoy the thrill of an affair, but when it's time to face the consequences, you can't bear it. The truth is, you're not heartbroken, you're just afraid of being held accountable. Men like you we call cowards." Her tone was icy, professional, and sharp. "My client has already gathered sufficient evidence of your infidelity. If you refuse to settle the divorce amicably, we'll proceed with a lawsuit. And trust me, the outcome will not be in your favor." Logan sat on the sofa, silently flipping through the documents Evelyn had provided, photos, voice recordings, messages. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, and he said nothing. He had thought he'd hidden everything so carefully, yet she had known all along. His phone buzzed. It was Lacey. Her voice, soft and sweet as always, cooed through the speaker. "Logan, when will you come see me? I miss you." Half of his face was shrouded in shadow as he spoke coldly. "Lacey Lynn, how many times have I told you, don't ever appear in front of Evelyn again? Why did you text her?" When I arrived in London, the weather was beautiful. Standing beside a sleek black Maserati, Ethan Reed leaned casually against the car, the afternoon sun gleaming on his silver-streaked short hair. He wore dark sunglasses and a perfectly tailored black suit, looking as if he'd stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. The moment he saw me, he took off his sunglasses and strode toward me with a bright, easy smile. He grabbed the suitcase from my hand and opened his arms wide. "Welcome home." I stepped back 2 paces, avoiding his enthusiasm with a polite but distant expression. Ethan and I had gone to the same university. He was my senior and once the top student of our professor. I studied antique restoration, and my professor had once praised me highly, saying I had a rare natural talent and the potential to become one of the best. In the end, though, I let my professor down. After graduation, I turned down the job she had recommended for me and returned home, determined to build a future with Logan. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed abroad to continue his career. I looked him up and down, then sighed softly. "You don't look like a researcher at all, Ethan." I had said the same thing every time we met, but I couldn't deny it. No matter how many hours I spent locked in a restoration lab, staring at relics and antiques, looking at a face like his could never be boring. This time, my return to London was partly because I couldn't stay in my home country any longer, and partly because Ethan had recently received a large batch of damaged artifacts. He was overwhelmed with work and desperately needed an assistant with skill and precision. After thinking it over, he decided that I was the best person for the job. When he first reached out, I was still busy preparing for my wedding, so I had politely declined. But after everything fell apart, I no longer had anywhere to go. I thought of Ethan again. At the time, I assumed he had already found someone else to help him. I just needed an excuse to run away, from the city, from the memories, from him. To my surprise, Ethan welcomed me back with genuine warmth. He didn't ask about what had happened or why a woman who should have been planning her wedding suddenly showed up overseas, alone. He wasn't curious, and I was grateful for that. At first, I thought I wasn't in the right state of mind to work. Even though I'd agreed to help, most of it was just an attempt to distract myself, to keep from thinking about the pain. But when I actually began working again, I realized something. Time wasn't the only thing that could heal wounds. Work could too. Restoring artifacts was a dry, tedious, and painstaking task. It required absolute precision and unwavering focus. And that focus kept my mind from drifting back to Logan Foster. Hours passed unnoticed as I lost myself in my craft. Then one afternoon, Attorney Lynn reached out to me. She had found new evidence and officially filed a lawsuit against Lacey Lynn for intentional injury and fleeing the scene of the accident. It wasn't until that moment that I remembered I had authorized her to handle the entire case before leaving the country. And now, it finally had an outcome. "Mr. Foster seems to have abandoned Lacey," Attorney Lynn said over the phone. "After reviewing the evidence you provided, he was furious. They had a big argument, and he cut off contact with her. Given Lacey's current situation, without his support, it's almost certain she'll go to prison." I didn't care about the chaos between them. I just wanted to end the call as quickly as possible. Later, at our alumni gathering, I raised my glass toward my old professor. "To you, Professor," I said softly. "Thank you for taking care of me all these years, and I'm sorry for disappointing you." My voice wavered slightly as I drank, my heart full of gratitude and regret. Back in college, Logan's career was still unstable, and we struggled to make ends meet. I juggled classes and part-time jobs, filling every spare hour of my day. At night, I worked at a convenience store. In the mornings, if I didn't have class, I picked up extra shifts at a fast food restaurant. There were days when I wished I could stretch 24 hours into 48, just to work a little more. When my professor found out, she was incredibly kind. She told me she had a small apartment and offered to rent it to me for an unbelievably low price, to ease my financial burden. She often invited me to her home for meals, treating me like her own daughter. I was always grateful for her warmth and generosity. It wasn't until Logan's design studio finally became stable and profitable that our finances had finally started to improve. Logan began covering most of our living expenses, and for the first time in years, life felt a little easier. Still, I never let myself depend entirely on him. I kept working part-time jobs, managing some of my own costs. During the reunion, my professor raised her glass, smiling kindly at me. "It's all right to make mistakes," she said softly. "What matters is knowing when to stop." We lifted our glasses together, toasting to steady careers and peaceful lives. No one asked what I had gone through after returning home. No one asked why I had left in silence. But everyone welcomed me back in their own quiet, gentle way. After the party, Ethan offered to drive me home. The southern hemisphere was deep in winter, and the cold winds stung my cheeks until they went numb. Ethan leaned down, unwrapped his scarf, and carefully draped it around my neck. His long, slender fingers brushed against my chin, warm and unhurried. "Are you planning to go back?" he asked suddenly. I hesitated for a long time before shaking my head. "I'll go back to the country, but not to that city again." Ethan's dark lashes fluttered slightly, and a small, knowing smile curved his lips. "My hometown is beautiful too. If you ever want, I could take you there someday." The meaning behind his words was clear enough. I didn't know how to respond, so I lowered my gaze and stayed silent. "Evelyn, finally, I've found you." The deep, familiar voice behind me carried both anger and desperation. "You left me for this pretty boy?" I froze. That voice, I would have recognized it anywhere. I turned and saw Logan Foster standing beneath a streetlight not far away, his eyes filled with pain and longing as he looked straight at me. "Stop being mad, okay? I came to take you home." I stood there, stunned. I had never imagined he would follow me all the way here. He had Lacey and a child with her. I had left precisely to give them my blessing, to let them have the happiness I no longer could. Shouldn't he be content? Why was he still chasing after me? Instinctively, I took a step back. Ethan immediately moved forward, placing himself in front of me protectively. His eyes hardened as he looked at Logan, full of suspicion and hostility. "Who are you?" Logan narrowed his eyes, his tone icy. "I'm Evelyn's husband. Who the hell are you?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Didn't you just say it yourself? I'm the pretty boy she's been keeping." Despite the tension, I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing my smile, Ethan relaxed a little. He leaned closer to my ear and whispered teasingly, "So the jealous husband's come knocking, huh? Want me to call a few guys to deal with him? I promise it'll be clean and quiet." I looked at him, startled. I hadn't expected this sharp, playful side of him. Logan's expression darkened. He reached out toward me, his voice thick with emotion. "Evelyn, I don't believe you can really let me go. I've ended things with Lacey. Come back with me. I swear, I'll never let you suffer again." His voice trembled with desperation, his eyes red as if he were truly in pain, but I couldn't make sense of it anymore. What kind of act was this? He already had a woman who adored him, a child who called him dad, and a perfect little family that anyone would envy. He had everything, so why come looking for me? I stared at him coldly. "Mr. Foster, I don't think there's anything left for us to say. My lawyer has already spoken with you. If you have any objections, take them up with her. But between us, there's nothing left to discuss." Logan froze for a moment, clearly taken aback by my tone. He ignored my words and stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but Ethan quickly blocked his path, his voice low and firm. "Evelyn," he said, standing tall between us, "you don't have to go with him." "How could you be so heartless, Evelyn?" Logan's voice cracked as he stepped closer. "We promised to be together forever. I swore to your grandmother I'd take care of you for the rest of my life." The mention of my grandmother's name made something inside me snap. Rage surged through my veins, burning away the last trace of restraint. I wanted to slap him. No, I needed to, and I did. "Logan Foster, how dare you mention my grandmother?" My voice trembled with fury. "If I had known you'd become this kind of man, I never would have cared about you back then." The sound of my palm striking his cheek echoed sharply in the cold night. His face went pale as he stared at me, stunned, as if he couldn't believe I could hate him this much. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," he stammered. "I never meant to betray you." I just felt sorry for her. Lacey reminded me so much of you, of how you used to be. When you were overseas, working yourself to exhaustion just to save money, I couldn't do anything to help you. Lacey had to work while taking care of her sick grandmother. I saw her and thought of you. I just wanted to help her, that's all. And she's not like you. She's fragile, dependent. She cared for me when I was tired and overworked. I needed someone to look after me too. Each word he spoke made me laugh bitterly at him, but mostly at myself, for ever loving someone like this. So what you're saying, I said coldly, is that you cheated on me with Lacey because you pitied her? That was your way of making it up to me? Logan, you make me sick. He flinched at my words, panic flickering in his eyes. Evelyn, please, he begged, stepping closer, his voice breaking. I know I messed up. I'm a bastard. I'm weak. I couldn't control myself. But I love you. Please, give me a chance to make it right. He looked completely broken, dark circles under his eyes, his hair a mess, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a stray dog begging for scraps of affection. But I felt nothing. Not pity, not compassion, nothing but disgust. Logan, I said quietly but firmly, not every mistake can be forgiven. The image of him holding my grandmother's hand flashed through my mind, his solemn promise that he would cherish me for life, that he'd never let me suffer. Yet just months after she passed away, he'd been in another woman's arms, creating a new life with her. You swore to her that you'd never hurt me, I said, my voice shaking. And only a few months after her death, you slept with Lacey Lynn. You had a child with her. What right do you have to ask for forgiveness? My throat tightened as anger burned behind my eyes. Get out, Logan Foster, I hissed. I don't ever want to see you again. He stood frozen, speechless, the light in his eyes dimming. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. The moment he disappeared from sight, I felt a soft touch on my cheek. Hey, Ethan said gently, his voice low and soothing. Don't be sad. He's not worth your tears. He handed me a tissue, his warm gaze steady on mine. That small kindness, so simple, so human, broke the fragile dam I had built inside myself. My chest heaved and I collapsed against him, sobbing uncontrollably into his chest. For a long time after that night, I didn't see Logan again. It wasn't until Attorney Lynn called me that I heard two pieces of good news. First, Lacey Lynn had finally been sentenced to prison. The court concluded that her reckless driving caused the accident that led to my miscarriage and severe physical harm. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Second, Logan Foster had finally agreed to the divorce. He signed away every asset under his name, leaving everything to me, and walked away with nothing but the clothes on his back. When Attorney Lynn told me, she let out a cold, sarcastic laugh. What a show! Acting like a tragic, self-sacrificing lover now that he's lost everything. I understood what she meant. During the affair, he had been joyful and indulgent. But when the truth came to light, he suddenly pretended to be a man consumed by guilt and devotion, like he loved me so much he could die for it. But if he had truly loved me, how could he have betrayed me in the first place? Before she went to prison, Lacey Lynn requested to see me one last time. I wasn't particularly interested in meeting her, but around that same time, a museum back home invited me to join a restoration project. The timing was convenient, so I accepted the offer. This time, though, I didn't travel alone. I had a shadow following me everywhere. Ethan came along, acting like the perfect assistant, pulling my suitcase, staying close by my side the entire trip. His eagerness made me both amused and uncomfortable. When the museum director saw the two of us arrive together, his face lit up with surprise and delight. I could tell he hadn't expected a buy one, get one free situation. The day I met Lacey, it was drizzling lightly. Ethan insisted on accompanying me to the prison. It was the first time I had ever truly faced her. I couldn't deny that she was beautiful, the kind of beauty that could easily make a man lose his mind. Even dressed in a faded prison uniform, she still carried that fragile, delicate charm that invited sympathy. But the venom in her eyes destroyed any trace of softness on her face. If I'd known it would come to this, she said coldly, I should have hit you harder and killed you outright. There wasn't a hint of remorse in her expression. I still couldn't understand what I had done to make her hate me so deeply. Why did you come back? She demanded bitterly. Wouldn't you be better off staying abroad? If it weren't for you, Logan and I could have been happy together. I would have given him a child. He was with me every day. We were so happy. It's all your fault. If you hadn't existed, I wouldn't be in this hell. I studied her quietly for a long moment before speaking softly. Isn't this the result of your own choices, Lacey? You're the one who kept putting on an act in front of me, I continued. You went out of your way to flaunt your closeness with Logan, deliberately provoking me. Wasn't your goal to make me file for divorce? Thinking back, it was never a coincidence. Every single time I saw them being affectionate, it had been carefully planned by her. She wanted me to see it, to doubt him, to spiral into suspicion. After the accident, I finally realized everything had been her scheme. She knew that once she hit me with her car, I would start questioning everything Logan did. She knew I'd begin watching him closely. And in truth, he was so cautious that if not for that crash, I probably never would have discovered his affair at all. Back then, my trust in him was absolute. Even when he stayed out all night, I would have believed he was simply busy with work, never that he was sleeping with someone else. But her car had slammed into me. How could I not have seen the truth after that? I lost, she muttered bitterly, her voice trembling. But I didn't lose to you. I lost to time. If only I'd met Logan before you. Her tone was hysterical, almost deranged. I couldn't listen any longer. You think I wanted to fight over a man like him? I cut in sharply. Even if you had met him before I did, can you guarantee he wouldn't have fallen for someone else later? A man who cheats once will cheat again. How can you call that kind of love worth fighting for? After that, I walked away without looking back. The work at the museum was grueling. Ethan and I barely had time to rest. We spent long days buried in restoration work, carefully bringing ancient artifacts back to life. I hardly thought of Logan anymore. Occasionally, though, I still heard bits of news about him through old acquaintances. Apparently, he'd been making a string of disastrous financial decisions, plunging his company into heavy losses. On top of that, he had transferred all his liquid assets to me, which caused his company's cash flow to collapse and nearly led to bankruptcy. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. What did concern me, however, was something else entirely. After spending so much time working closely with Ethan, I began to realize that the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, lingered near me, was no longer just friendly. There was something deeper, something unspoken. And it terrified me, because for the first time in years, I didn't know how to respond. Back when I was still in love with Logan Foster, I had never noticed anything like this. But this time, after returning to London, Ethan's warmth toward me was unmistakably different, more open, more deliberate. Having been in a long relationship before, I wasn't naive. I could clearly feel the subtle affection behind his gaze. Under normal circumstances, I might have felt uneasy about it. But Ethan had a way of making things feel easy. He was playful, humorous, and occasionally, just the right amount of teasing. His closeness never felt intrusive, but it was enough to let me know he cared. Spring had returned, painting the lakeside green again. Rows of willow trees were sprouting tender leaves. Our restoration project had finally wrapped up, and Ethan suggested we take a walk to enjoy the spring air. I hesitated briefly, then agreed. We wandered aimlessly, climbing a winding stone path up a small mountain. From above, we could see tiled rooftops and red walls nestled between the trees. A temple came into view, peaceful and solemn in the afternoon light. "Do you want to go up and light some incense?" Ethan asked suddenly, his tone unusually serious. He lowered his head, scrolling through something on his phone, brows furrowed in concentration. He looked oddly tense. "What's wrong?" I asked. He glanced up and sighed. "We came to the wrong place. Maybe we should climb another mountain instead." I blinked at him, puzzled. It was rare to see him this serious. "Why? What's wrong with this one?" He handed me his phone. "It says online that anyone who visits this temple will stay single for 3 years. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. His earnest expression mixed with such a ridiculous superstition was too much. "Oh, come on," I said, tugging at his sleeve. "Don't tell me you actually believe that nonsense." I tightened my grip on his hand and pulled him forward. "Besides, rumor also says this temple can exchange love for wealth. Don't you want to get rich?" Ethan looked down at our joined hands, his ears turning slightly red, his lips curved into a soft, playful smile. Well, that's not so bad then. 3 years, huh? I can wait. Waiting's what I'm best at.